Hey, everybody, we're back again today for the 1970s. This time we're doing Westerns, a category that sometimes we skip in the decades, but the 70s have enough to fill out a top five list. So we're bringing Westerns back. Here with Brian, AYBL Maine. We're here with Sean, AKA Doc, and we're going to give our top five Westerns of the 1970s. Doc, you're up first.
All right, we'll do the Westerns of the 70s. Here we go. We were just talking briefly there, but I found this to be pretty difficult, to be honest with you. So lots to go from in a lot of senses because there's different almost kinds of Westerns we could look at. So I'm just going to go right in. Number 5 is Little Big Men, Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
What a neat story. It's I don't even know how you'd almost describe the movie. It's a bit, it's somebody who's 121 years old or 120 years old talking about living through, all these different things in history and, living with the natives and all these different things and all these different, he had like, I think 10 or 12 different parts of his life that he actually touches on throughout a movie that, he's the last survivor of, the little bighorn or something like this. And there's a whole bunch of different things that happen to Dustin Hoffman's character throughout of it. But it's, he's a gunslinger. He's all these different kind of things that have happened to him. It's almost like a Forrest Gumpish before Forrest Gump set in this era. There's just so much that happens to him throughout this. It's definitely the vibe. It's got some pretty funny comedic parts to it as well. I think Dustin Hoffman pulls this off for not really a Dustin Hoffman type of role in one sense. So I think Dustin is pretty solid here in the 70s. And I think this is this kind of shows his versatility here, I think pretty strongly. And it's because it is the different almost characters that he goes throughout this whole movie. So Little Big Man is, custard and everything else he goes through with it. Little Big Men is a really good Western movie from the 70s, I find. So that's my number 5. Number 4, these were actually, the next 4 were pretty tough to rank in some senses, but number 4, High Plains Drifter. So before maybe Unforgiven, this might be the last of like a real spaghetti Western kind of flick or something like that, before it just kind of faded away like in the 70s at some point. I don't know exactly where, but at least for Clint it did. And yeah, it just, Clint goes on to do other things, and I'm sure we'll hear his name maybe pop up a little later. He will for me, but just that revenge old Western kind of movie, Clint coming in to save the town. It's the High Plains Drifter is just a classic, almost 60s Western movie in the 70s is what it is. The 60s was really strong for Westerns. Obviously, it's maybe the strongest genre of that era, probably. It fades over into the 70s at this time, and it's nice to see Clint carry it on because High Plains is a really good one. Can't remember the guy who plays the bad guy, but he's a really good character actor. Sorry?
Jeffrey Lewis.
Jeffrey Lewis, yes. Yeah. Really good character, bad guy actor, man. It's it's the good and the bad. This is what you're going to get in a Western movie at some of these things, and just classic and very tense scenes in this movie too. And it doesn't take long to get going either, if you want the truth. So he's in town, and then it just goes from there. To be honest with you, it's I'm going to get a haircut and grab a bottle, and we'll see what happens from there. And you're 5 minutes in, and it's like there's some bodies on the ground. So it's the Clint classic in one sense. So really, really entertaining for a Western. Number 3. Man, these go different. McCabe and Miss Miller, man. Number 3.
Yeah.
I like Warren Beatty. Julie Christie's great. And you start doing these kind of things, you find out, and Julie Christie's, she pops up quite a bit in the 70s, actually, more than I remembered before I started getting into this kind of dive on something. So I know her and Warren were very close throughout the 70s, and that obviously shows throughout the decade as well. But a neat little story about open up a brothel here in this town, just over in the one town over, and just starting his own business as Warren Beatty's character and as McCabe. And he's doing it, and basically the town follows him, and he's the leader of the town. And they just kind of grab his coattails and go with it. And she shows up and says, I can run this whole thing for you, and we'll go in as partners. And then the backstories of what he's all about, you know, did he kill somebody and all these other things? He's really a bad dude, and people come in to sell the business or want to buy the business. And if you don't, they're the strong arms are going to come in after him. And where it goes from there is where it goes from there. But we know Jack wasn't the first one to actually pose in the snow when he was frozen one time either. So
No.
it's a
Yep.
really good movie, really entertaining.
Yeah.
McCabe Mrs. Miller is my number 3 for the 70s. Number 2, I must like these kind of movies, man. Jeremiah Johnson. It's Robert Redford. It's my number 2. This is a great movie. This is a mountain man, you know, guy coming out of the war, just wanting to live a different life. And there's different things that happen, and you see these things happen. You know where Braveheart gets some of their stories as we move or tags on, but the killing of wife and child and some of these things are quite common. So, and this is what happens in Jeremiah Johnson here. So his character just almost gets forced into a marriage, into a different lifestyle that he wasn't expecting. And there's a native aspect to it and different things, and a lot of revenge. You don't see Robert Redford like this too often. And it's shot really well. It's got some very epic scenes and intense scenes in the movie as well. Comes full circle in a lot of senses, this movie does, because really it just does. He's a mountain man, and he's all these other things, and he comes back to try to be a mountain man again. So Jeremiah Johnson is it was almost my number 1, to be honest with you. It was really powerful. I really loved it, and I really liked Robert Redford in this flick. So it's in the whole thing. What can you do? You can't take out the outlaw Josey Wales, man. So
Yeah.
Clint's my number 1. Wife and kid again, hey man, stay away from the wife and kid. And,
Yeah,
you might
man.
have a life. You know? So, great story.
Recipe for disaster. You start
Totally.
messing with the
You go
wife
back
and
in, and you think you're going to be part of the rebellious gang, and you go back after, the army and stuff like this. And meanwhile, it's another trap on a trap. And it's like the ultimate backstabbing in a Western movie happening here, like throughout the whole movie. Clint is Clint. Man, he's the ultimate cool cowboy dude, man. There's just no getting around that. That guy was born to play a cowboy in the 70s and the 60s, man. That's for sure. He was born to play a cop too, but I tell you, man, that guy can play a cowboy. Friggin' the outlaw Josey Wales, man.
Yeah.
Nothing close, really, in one sense. Like I said, Jeremiah Johnson is a different kind of vibe movie for that. So if it's scale-wise, entertainment-wise, Outlaw, yeah, number 1 for the 70s, man.
Very good.
Perfect.
How'd we do, Brian?
I had two of the in your top 5 or in my top 5, and I had the McCabe movie and Jeremiah Johnson. They were there too, so I had to check those off, but they were just
Outside.
Yeah, just outside it. So my number 5, this is going to be the one that I said was I'm going to go way out on the limb.
Yeah.
This is a neo-Western in my opinion, and I've seen enough people kind of back me up if you read enough on it. I think Taxi Driver is a neo-Western, so I'm going to put Taxi Driver at number 5.
Wow.
Really?
It has all the elements that a Western has. Really, he's the outsider who doesn't really fit in, who feels like he's got to fight back against the world and against the system. He's going to save the young girl from the bad things that could happen to her, and it ends up having a violent end for him. So I thought, and it despite its dark nature and everything else, I mean, great performances by everybody involved. Robert De Niro was fantastic. Jodie Foster, a very young Jodie Foster in it, is great in the movie as well. To me, when I watched it again, and I did watch it again, if I were to remove him from New York City and put him in in the 1870s in a Western town, that would be the type of story that it really was. It's just that they're not, instead of driving a taxi, they would be riding horses back then. So I went ahead and put Taxi Driver there at number 5. I know that's going to be weird. People are going to be like, what are you talking
call,
about?
man.
I think it is. I mean, I think if you need an early representation of neo-Westerns, a Taxi Driver might be one to look at, Number 4 for me, I've got Blazing Saddles. Because again, I have a comedy that kind of spilled out of its proper category, lands here. I think I think somebody's already talked about it. I'm not sure which one of you guys had it on your list.
I had it too. We both had it.
Both you guys had it on your list. I mean, so you guys have talked about it. I'll just reiterate that my favorite person in it was Slim Pickens. For some reason, I'm just a big Slim Pickens fan. Loved him in Dr. Strangelove. Love him in Blazing Saddles. And that scene where he comes to the toll booth, I'll mention it again. And the toll comes down, and he's like, God damn it! Now we gotta send somebody back to get a shitload of dimes. I just thought that was like one of the best lines ever in a Mel Brooks film. It was just hilarious to me. I loved it. So number 3 for me is the follow-up to True Grit. I've got Rooster Cogburn. It's not the continuation, but it's like the rest of his story. Now he's an aging marshal. Actually, he's not even a marshal. He's had his badge taken away because he's killed too many people. Basically, not brought enough people in, arrest them in a normal way. He's just killing them. And so then they kind of give him an ultimatum that they'll give him his badge back if he brings in these robbers. And and then he ends up having to take along Katharine Hepburn with him as a kind of a ride along, because she wants to not get back at, but she wants to meet the man that had killed her husband. And so the story there and the dynamic that goes on between those two, I thought they had pretty good chemistry. If you thought about it from the outset, you wouldn't think that they would necessarily, but I thought they did. I thought it was a good story. I was a big True Grit fan, so a little bit more Rooster Cogburn didn't hurt my feelings at all. So I put it at number 3. Number 2 for me is High Plains Drifter. So it's what I remember most about that film is that it's he's coming into town. He's coming into town. I think he fully knows where those guys are coming when they get out of prison, that they're going to come back to that town.
They're coming to come back to that
town, knowing that the town would want his help to protect themselves against these guys. And they were all using each other in the film. They were using him to protect their town. He was using them to draw the bad guys to him as bait. That's what they were. And he, in the end, he kind of made sure that all the underlying evils that everybody had in the town were all kind of brought to light in some way. He made them paint the whole town red. Made the little guy in town the sheriff. Yeah,
the marshal.
I thought that was great. Jeffrey Lewis, who's also appeared with him in Every Which Way But Loose and Every Which Way You Can, was great as the villain Stacy, I think his character's name was. You found out during the course of the movie that they had whipped Clint's character, really bad or something. I think it was, and there was all these flashback scenes that you just kind of caught on to as you went. So,
and he directed too.
Yeah, hands down, Outlaw Josey Wales is number 1. I mean, the one thing I could say about it, I said to my wife was, they must have like some type of Velcro attached to his ass in that film, because he caught every goddamn stray dog that was out west as he was just trying to get off to go by himself. It seemed like he was picking up every damn stray dog. These people from freaking Missouri and
everywhere.
The old Indian, and then the squaw that they pick up at the swap shop there that they had. It's like he's just picking up everything along the way. And my favorite line in it, I think, is every time that something serious would happen, he would always say, "I reckon so." And,
I reckon so.
He'd always say the same thing,
And then he'd walk out.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. And then of course at the end where he has the meeting with the Native Americans, where they're asking for permission to stay on the grounds, and basically they're asking him, where does he get his truth? And he said, Well, I've got it right here in my rifles and right here in my pistols.
Pistols.
He said, that's my truth. And I think at that moment, I think even the chief understood that, yeah, this is not going to work out for me the way I would like it to work out. So let's just say, yeah, let's call it a draw.
We can still be friends, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna
we'll
move
be
on.
friendly here in this case. So it was kind of interesting, but it's not my favorite Clint Eastwood Western.
No.
I think Unforgiven still is number one, but it definitely is the best Western of the 70s, in my opinion. I agree with you, Doc.
Yeah, and
Fantastic. Good one,
and
Brandon.
it accomplishes that with Sandra Locke, one of your favorite
Oh.
actresses.
Yeah.
At least Richard Dreyfuss is not in it.
That's true. Isn't Josey Wales though the one where he's spitting and every time he spits he hits a spider or a bug or something?
Or hits the dog.
Yeah, it's like tobacco juice or something coming out, you know?
Yeah. But something's always going to happen as soon as he spits.
Yeah, as soon as he spits.
Yeah. Something's going to happen.
All right, before I do my five, I just want to throw out a couple others. Little Big Man, believe it or not, I've never seen in full, so I couldn't put it on the list. I've got 3 Eastwood runners up: High Plains Drifter, Joe Kidd, and The Beguiled. I liked all 3 of them, but
Wow.
they didn't cut the mustard. And Jeremiah Johnson's another one that would have been my number 6 pick. So, top 5. Number 5 is Bad Company, a little known 1972 film directed by Robert Benton of Kramer versus Kramer fame and
Wow.
Places of the Heart fame. This is one of his first films. Jeff Bridges is in this cast along with John Savage. There's a young actor named Barry Brown who's the lead, who never seemed to appear again. He was a draft dodger from the Civil War, and he turns in with a gang of bandits heading west. They're runaways, criminals, con men, wayward youths. It's a coming of age Western, very realistic. It's a little small gem of a film. Growing up in tough circumstances. I really enjoyed this film. I only saw it once. Little scene, unappreciated Western from the early 70s. And it always has a place in my heart. I thought it was
what
very
year
realistic.
Is that, Rich?
1970, 72.
72.
Bad Company.
Okay. All right. I haven't seen it, so I got to see it.
Yeah, it's good.
Either.
It's good because the kids are so realistic. It's a sad movie. A lot of them are homeless, running away from bad situations, and they form a little pack of delinquents, so to speak. But it's well done. Number 4 is Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which I saw recently. A Sam Peckinpah film. James Coburn plays Pat Garrett, and Chris Christopherson plays Billy the Kid. Basically, Pat Garrett is a former friend of Billy the Kid. They're running buddies from the old days, or last few years anyway. But he's under orders from the governor now to bring him in dead or alive because there was some problems on a cattle ranch, and Billy the Kid's a gunslinger, and he's killed too many people, and they want him off the terrain there. Bloody, violent, as most of these Peckinpah films are. You looked at somebody the wrong way, and the next thing you know, you're out there dueling, and do or die. It's just the way it was. You lived in those days. It was understood that you had a disagreement with somebody, let's end it like a man and go out and shoot each other. It happened. They invited Billy the Kid in for dinner once. He's eating dinner with somebody. They had a slight disagreement. The next thing you know, they're outside squaring off. So it's just the way of the Old West in 1881. Bob Dylan actually wrote the soundtrack for this movie.
Yeah, I've got the album.
Yeah, Knocking on Heaven's Door was the key track. And Dylan appears in the movie as this mysterious character named Alias. He sort of floats around in between good guys and bad guys. You never know where he's going to show up. Sam Peckinpah, he only made 14 films in his career, and 7 of them were Western. So he excelled at Western. He was right at home making them. So I put that at number 4. Number 3 is one that Doc had, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Warren Beatty, Julie Christie, directed by Robert Altman. Very unusual Western for me. It's out in the Pacific Northwest, sort of frontier land. Like Doc said, this guy comes with he's a gambler, and he wants to create a little town of his own. He has a brothel, and he's like, everybody looks up to him because he turned a profit with this little dream of his. He imports these prostitutes. They come in on the local train and they start a business. It turns a profit. But the American dream, it's basically about the American dream back in those days, until a large corporation shows up and they want to buy him out. They want to give him a price to say, you know, we're going to take over now. And he sort of misjudges that situation, and things go a little wrong from there. It's very atmospheric. The color palette. It's snowing one minute, rainy the next. It's a lot of browns and grays and this and that. Very wet, damp, dreary.
Just like the Northwest, buddy.
Just like the Northwest. So it captures that particular part of the country. It's got the Leonard Cohen soundtrack this time. All
That's
these
right.
beautiful Leonard Cohen songs throughout, 4 or 5 of them, and they play against the backdrop of what's going on. The first half hour is mostly Western, and then it gets into the gunslingers coming to town, and they're sent there by the corporation who wants to either scare or take care of Warren Beatty and end him for not agreeing with their proposition. The final shot is summed up with a certain someone lying in a snowbank, which is very poetic. Doc talked a little bit about that as well. My number 2 is one, the old sentimental me put this one in here, The Shootist, John Wayne, directed by Don Siegel. John Wayne's final film. He plays an aging gunfighter dying of cancer, and he was dying of cancer in real life as well. He rents a room from a widow played by Lauren Bacall and her son, Ron Howard, young redheaded Ronnie Howard. He's confronted by people for the actions of his past, someone seeking revenge. He concocts a plan to end things on his own terms, and he basically goes out with a bang. It's an old-fashioned Western. I like it, well acted. It's, you know, old-fashioned and by the numbers. It's pretty formulaic. And it gives the legacy of John Wayne a proper send-off. True legend of the cinema, John Wayne. Good way to go out, The Shootist. Number 1, we've hit the trifecta, ladies and gentlemen. It's The Outlaw, Josey Wales. Couldn't help it. I thought it was the best Western, too, of the decade. Directed by Clint, starring Clint, Sandra Locke aside. Great movie. And this is the classic tale of revenge. You know, his wife and child are murdered by the Union soldiers, and he joins the Confederate Army, and he refuses to surrender when the war is over, and he sees the same man who gunned down his family, and he's hell-bent on taking care of him by the end of the picture. It's got the themes and formulas, again, of a traditional Western. You've seen it before, where the wife and kid get killed, and the guy's got to take care of business. I've seen it in Steve McQueen movie Nevada Smith, and it goes back to The Searchers, I guess, and this again. All builds up to that big showdown at the end. Clint, like you said, born to play these cowboy roles. Nobody does it better, especially in the 70s. He had that look. He was the right age to play these characters.
Yep.
And tough to imagine anybody else in the role of Outlaw Josey Wales. Who else is going to play that? Nobody.
No one.
It's nice that he got some freedom to do what he'd been acting for a bit and stuff, and he got to get a chance to go behind the director's chair and get into that neighborhood. Because let's face it, Clint turned out to be a pretty good director throughout his career too, man. So
and an underrated actor, and he's a good actor as an older man too. I mean, a lot of these roles, Gran Torino and the Mule, he's very good in these roles. Even as the one with the boxing movie, $1 Million Baby, he's great in that too. And some of the directing movies like Mystic River, what a masterwork that is.
Yeah.
So Clint Eastwood's an all-time legend as far as I'm
he's
concerned.
the legend, man.
He's been doing it for 6 decades. I mean, really, think about that.
I mean, that's
He's 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s,
he's 90s,
10s, all the way through. And he's either directed or starred in most cases a lot of these great films.
Sure has.
Hard to beat him. So that'll wrap up our Westerns. Do you guys have any that we left out, didn't talk about, or are we good?
No, that was pretty much what I was pretty comfortable with when I went in, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The
So we'll
Shootist
end-
almost did it for me. That would be the other one that I had that I
what-
looked at.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Your John Wayne there.
Oh, okay.
Shootist.
Shootist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had to put it in for sentimental reasons. It probably doesn't deserve to be number 2, but it works for me.
Today
I-
it does,
Song
Rich.
song.
Today it does, buddy.
Today it does. When I was writing that list up, it was number 2.
It was number 2.
All right, so that'll wrap up our westerns. We're going to be back with the infamous crime thriller segment, which is always packed and loaded with great films. So the 70s are no exception. So we'll be back with that in our next segment. Be sure to subscribe to AYBL Maine, Brian, Doc as well. And until we see you next time, please leave the comments, give us a like, subscribe to our channels, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.